What if I told you that the last truly free generation wasn't raised with iPads, but with scraped knees and rusty bikes? That those who were raised in the 60s and 70s might just hold the key to emotional resilience, and we've been ignoring it? Let's face it, something changed, dramatically. And if you've ever looked around and thought, why does everything feel off? You're not alone. See, growing up in the 70s, or even the 60s, was a world apart from today. No smartphones, no helicopter parenting, just pure, screen-free childhood freedom. Kids were allowed to disappear until the streetlights came on. Mental health wasn't a hashtag, it was built through scraped elbows, real friendships, and yes, a little tough love. But today, we wrap kids in bubble wrap, then wonder why anxiety and depression are skyrocketing. Here's the wild part. We think we've advanced, but what if we've lost more than we've gained? What if the old-school parenting style of the 70s, the life before internet, actually gave people something modern kids are starving for: emotional resilience, deeper self-worth, and a sense of real connection? This isn't just nostalgia, it's a warning, and it's also a solution. So, in this video, we're peeling back the layers, diving deep into how childhood in the 70s shaped a generation, what we've lost along the way, and what we urgently need to bring back. It's time to rethink how we raise kids, how we live, and how generations became so different. Back in the day, being raised in the 60s and 70s meant one thing above all else: freedom. Not just physical freedom to roam the neighborhood, but emotional space to figure things out without constant adult interference. Kids before smartphones had to entertain themselves with sticks, tree forts, or whatever their imagination could whip up. Parents weren't obsessively tracking their every move on GPS. If you came home alive and before dinner, you were doing fine. That kind of childhood freedom shaped how 1970s kids saw the world. They learned risk, problem-solving, and resilience by living it. No parental safety net. Think about it. If your bike chain popped off 5 blocks from home, you either learned how to fix it or walked. No YouTube tutorial. That's the kind of screen-free childhood that built real-world intelligence. The boomer generation psychology was baked in sweat, scraped knees, and street smarts. And that's where the gap really starts to show. Today's generation, born into a world of constant digital connection, rarely gets to experience true independence. Everything's scheduled, monitored, and optimized. But there's a cost to that. Without freedom, kids don't just lose fun, they lose the ability to self-regulate. This is the first fracture in the 70s versus today debate, and it sets the stage for something even more subtle, yet deeply damaging: emotional resilience and tough love. When you were raised in the 60s or 70s, nobody coddled your feelings. If you fell, you got up. If you cried too long, someone probably told you to walk it off. Sounds harsh by today's standards, right? But here's the thing. This old-school parenting wasn't about being cold. It was about building emotional resilience. And it worked. Life in the 70s taught you to handle disappointment, not spiral because of it. That's where a major shift in generational psychology happened. Kids back then were allowed to feel pain, sit with it, and figure out how to keep going. Today, discomfort is treated like an emergency. But resilience doesn't come from avoiding pain, it comes from learning to manage it. Imagine telling a 1970s kid to go to therapy because they weren't picked for dodgeball. They'd probably laugh, and then go back to the game. That doesn't mean trauma wasn't real, it just means the tools were different. The beauty of that old-school toughness wasn't just in survival, it was in confidence. Knowing you could get through hard things made you more grounded. That's something that growing up in the 60s and 70s gave people a backbone. And without realizing it, many of today's kids are missing that foundation. But that emotional grit didn't just appear from nowhere. It came from something deeper, something baked into how parenting in the 70s worked. And that's exactly what we'll dig into next. Parenting styles, then versus now. Parenting in the 70s was a whole different universe. There were no parenting podcasts, no mom groups debating screen time, and no constant Googling of child development milestones. Parents weren't perfect, but they weren't paranoid either. If you were raised in the 70s, chances are your parents let you fail, mess up, and figure it out, because they trusted you'd learn something from it. That trust was a kind of quiet wisdom. Compare that with today's world, where parenting feels like a high-stakes job interview. Every decision is analyzed, every misstep feared, and kids feel that pressure. What used to be a digital versus analog childhood has become a micromanaged experience. 1970s kids learned by doing. Kids today learn by being told, over and over again, what not to do. That shift has created a generation that's often overwhelmed, risk-averse, and uncertain of their own instincts. Here's the twist. It's not just the kids who changed. It's the system. With social media judging every move and the internet broadcasting every parenting choice, moms and dads are constantly on edge. But the truth is, the more we try to perfect childhood, the more we rob it of the very messiness that made 70s childhood memories so powerful. And that shift doesn't just affect kids, it echoes into adulthood, shaping confidence, identity, and mental health. But there's another layer still, one that reaches into generational trauma and how our parents were shaped long before us. Generational trauma and the legacy of hardship. To really understand the psychology of generations, you have to look at what came before the freedom of the 70s. The parents raising kids in the 60s and 70s were often shaped by war, scarcity, or post-war recovery. Many lived through the Great Depression or had parents who did. That kind of hardship left a mark, and it showed up in how they raised their children. There wasn't much room for emotional indulgence. Survival came first. This passed down a kind of generational trauma, but also, strangely, a toughened spirit. It's why so many people raised in the 70s grew up with that figure-it-out mindset. Love was there, but it wasn't always soft. It was shown through putting food on the table, keeping a roof over your head, and letting you scrape your knees so you'd learn to stand on your own. It wasn't perfect, but it built something modern parenting struggles to replicate: self-trust. Now, as we break cycles and become more aware of emotional health, many are trying to undo that trauma, which is necessary. But in doing so, some of the strengths passed down are being lost. There's a balance that's hard to strike, honoring emotional needs without overprotecting. And that tension is shaping today's parenting approaches in ways that make kids feel safer, yet sometimes more anxious. So the question becomes, how much has technology amplified this shift? And what did life before internet and smartphones offer that modern life simply can't? Technology, connection, and the digital divide. Before smartphones, before Wi-Fi, before screens followed us everywhere, life just flowed differently. If you wanted to talk to a friend, you knocked on their door. If you wanted to be entertained, you used your hands, your mind, or your imagination. Kids before the internet didn't just have more time, they had more presence. The kind that builds focus, patience, and social intuition. Being raised in the 70s wasn't a constant dopamine drip. It was a slower rhythm that gave the brain room to breathe. Now contrast that with today. Kids are raised in a digital ocean, constantly scrolling, swiping, and responding. Attention spans are shorter, real-life interaction feels awkward, and boredom, which once sparked creativity, has become something to avoid at all costs. That's the cost of growing up with technology instead of with people. The digital versus analog childhood is more than just nostalgic. It's foundational to how humans develop socially and emotionally. And the irony? We're more connected than ever, but somehow lonelier, more stimulated, yet less fulfilled. There's a reason why 70s nostalgia hits so hard. It reminds people of a time when connection meant eye contact, not emojis. When a summer day stretched out like a lifetime. If we really want to understand how generations are different, we have to face this digital elephant in the room. Because the world may have changed, but our emotional wiring hasn't. So, what do we do with all this? So now that you see the full picture, here's the real question. Are we raising stronger kids or just more fragile ones? And if you grew up with the freedom of the 70s, the resilience of old-school parenting, and the calm of a screen-free world, do you ever wonder what would happen if we brought just some of that back? This isn't just about nostalgia, it's about strategy. What if today's kids had a taste of the independence you once knew? What if we unplugged just enough to bring back imagination, real human connection, and emotional grit? The truth is, we're not powerless. You can start today by setting small limits, like screen-free hours. Share 1970s kids' stories with your children. Let them get bored, let them problem solve, let them feel what you once felt. because here's the deal. The world isn't going to slow down on its own. If we want to bridge the generational divide, we have to lead it. So, what will you change after this video? Will you challenge the system or keep going with the flow? Let me know in the comments. I read every one of them. And if this sparked something inside you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's so much more to uncover about generational psychology, old school wisdom, and raising a stronger future together.